All right.
All right. Welcome to Over 50, starting over, everyone. I'm Barry Edwards.
And I'm Merle Garrison.
And I got a bit of a head cold. I
Still,
had vacation in our
yeah, you picked
absence.
it up. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what you get for going on vacation.
airports, man. Airports. And so I had it the second day. We're there on the beach, but it didn't hamper me at all. But just a head cold. I just do nasal spray. I have horrible sinuses anyway. But on the way back,
Yeah.
go through the airport, all that crap again, get home. The next day after getting home, I was bad. And so this is like going on 12 days now or something. And
Yeah.
I have a friend that I walk the dogs with, amongst many other friends. And he's a pediatrician pulmonologist, respiratory.
Okay. Right.
And he's like, "What? You're still sick?" He goes, "I'll write you a script for that." That was yesterday.
Yeah.
So I'm my second day into this these antibiotics, and I woke up not feeling horrible, and for the first time, and I think by tomorrow I'm going to start feeling a lot better. So
Boy,
that's
man, antibiotics can really knock stuff right out of there. Although it makes me feel sometimes it hurts my stomach.
Lisa said that too. I kind of got an iron stomach, but I mean, I know that they try not to prescribe them much because you build up a resistance to them. And there's like a scare that we'll get to a point where there will a disease will develop. We'll probably develop ourselves in a lab, but a disease will develop that will be resistant to current antibiotics. And then,
yeah. Well, that's probably true, especially, gosh, remember during COVID, it was like, that's when we found out that all of the antibiotics are made in China.
Yeah, like more than 90%.
Yeah, and then surprise, we got a problem with the supply chain.
Right. Hey, I
was going to say about that
ahead.
flying thing. A lot of people get sick when they fly, but if you fly all the time or frequently, you kind of build up an immunity to the different viruses around the country.
I would think so.
And so usually, so for me, what happens is when I fly, a lot of times I'm fine, but whoever I flew with that isn't flying a lot gets sick. That happens a lot. And then when I didn't fly for some time, I was so concerned that once I got back on the plane, I was going to have to go through that again. And I haven't. I'm doing pretty good with that.
Let me ask you this. This is a little mystery to me since you fly a lot more than me. We're on the tarmac in Sarasota for a little while, and above the baggage bins was all of a sudden, for quite some time, a lot of steam-looking stuff. And I said to Lisa, I wonder if that is something of a disinfectant.
I don't know if I've seen that before. That doesn't sound
good to me. Could it have been air conditioning?
It could have been. I mean,
like a condensation,
humidity, right? And I guess I have seen something like that.
Well, this is extremely noticeable.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope that I don't know. I don't think I would feel good if they were spraying something in the air. Like, what are you spraying in the air? I don't
not telling us about. I know. I hear you. Hey, I wanted to share, as I frequently do, a Cleveland Clinic health tip that I thought was a really interesting, simple, and valuable one. It's called Up Your Game for Better Brain Health. While digital games are wildly popular these days, going old school may have its merits. In a recent study of more than 1,000 people in their 70s, those who regularly play non-digital games like cards, board games, and chess had better memory and thinking skills in their 70s compared to those who didn't. I think that's interesting. Even starting a game playing habit late in life seemed to help people maintain good cognitive health. Start a weekly game night with friends or family. Try card games like Gin, Rummy, Hearts, or Cribbage, I've never heard of. Or board games like Scrabble, Monopoly, Risk, Ticket to Ride, Codenames, Hive, or Catan. Never heard of half of those.
Nah, I never heard of that either.
You'll have fun with people you care about, and you'll get the neurons a workout. They may have lifelong benefits. And then I just have to add this. It will also reduce loneliness, which is a huge killer. And it's very true. There's studies on that.
Back to the Bible, it says it is not good for man to be alone.
It's
That was
not.
when Adam was alone on the earth without Eve. And so he created Eve. And now we men are completely occupied.
Yeah, yeah. Now all we're doing is trying to behave well enough so that we don't get in trouble with these women.
Well,
That's
imagine if they weren't here, how stinky this world would be.
I know, I know, I know.
I know, but this is good stuff. I mean, we've always known that this type of brain exercise is good for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, a lot of the elderly do these crosswords, and
Yeah.
I'm terrible at that. It's so frustrating to me.
Yeah.
Crossword puzzles.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just see one
I
and
I
I get
play
angry.
something like that. It's like a word scramble, I think is what it's called, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I play it every day, and it looks like a crossword puzzle. And you're not given the hints. It's just take these 8 letters and unscramble them into different words. And I'm obsessed with it.
I
And that's
kind of
supposed
like
to be
that.
great
That's
for your
fun.
brain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fun. There was that game that used to be in the Plain Dealer, or maybe it was the Cleveland Press, where it was the Jumble. You ever play the Jumble before? Where it's
Well, is
like
that the one that's like a
it's kind of
block
like
of letters and
no,
then you
no, those I hate those too. I don't they'd always okay, so here's my thing. In school, they'd be like, "Oh, we're gonna give you a fun exercise." And it'd be that thing where it'd be a block of letters. Go ahead and
Yeah.
pick, there's like 20 words in there, and I could pick out maybe two, and then everybody, oh, I'm done. And I'd be like pulling my hair out, like I
Yeah.
can't
You
figure
did pull your hair out.
I did, and I would just hate those things. But no, the jumble was in the Plain Dealer Cleveland Press. It would be like 5 words that were completely jumbled, and you had to figure out what those words were. And every day there would be a new 5 words that you just, they would be jumbled up. The letters would be jumbled, so you'd have to figure out what it was. And I thought that was really fun. That
Huh.
was a fun game for me.
Yeah, I think that sounds fun.
Okay, speaking of games,
go ahead.
I just want to say here's something that I've been doing that my daughter turned me on to. It's called Duolingo, Duolingo. Have you heard of this?
No.
Okay, so it's an app on the phone. It's free. There's a paid version where you don't get the advertisements, just get the free one.
Yeah.
And it teaches you how to speak whatever language you want to speak.
Oh, how fun.
It's free, fun, effective. Learning with Duo is fun, and research shows that it works. With quick, bite-sized lessons, you'll earn points and unlock new levels while gaining real-world communication skills. So I have this on my phone. Hallie came over to the house during Christmas with Brandon, and she was telling me that she's on day something like 90 of learning Japanese. And I was like, "What? You're learning Japanese?"
Wow. Why'd she pick Japanese?
She is well, first off, she's very much into the Japanese cartoons. Forgot the
anime.
Anime, right? She's
Yeah.
a huge anime fan, and
Yeah.
so she has been, Brandon too, ever since they were little. And she's always wanted to go to Japan. She just loves Japan.
It's supposed to be a great culture.
It's supposed to be, and she's learning the language, and she's saving money to go on a trip there.
Oh, cool!
And so she's now she's on like day 150 something, and so she's showing me this app and how she's learning it, and it looked kind of fun. And then she's reading Japanese letters, and she's speaking Japanese to me. And I'm like, oh wow, that is so cool. She goes, you can do it too, Dad. I'm like, what? I download it, and she's like, well, what language do you want to learn? So I was like, Spanish. I've always been interested in Spanish, but she's like, I think you would like Spanish and Hebrew. And I'm like, oh yeah, Hebrew. I am very interested in Hebrew. I've been studying the Hebrew alphabet, which is very intense.
Is this because of biblical studies?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And once you understand the Hebrew and the Latin, you start to get a way deeper meaning of what the word actually is saying. Hebrew is very unique that way. Anyway, so I started, and I'm on day 70 now, and they encourage you through these streaks. I'm telling you, and it's fun to learn. It's so easy. I can't even believe how easy it is. But the thing is that they keep you engaged because you want to have these streaks. Like mine, I have a 70-day in a row streak of
Yeah.
nonstop learning. And then what happens is the next day it'll send you, you don't want to lose that 70-day streak,
Right.
and it keeps you involved like that. And you're competing with other people on there, like who can be the best.
Yeah.
And also, like Hallie's on there too. So when I achieve something, she can see it and then she'll send me kudos. So totally keeps you involved. You're
Yeah.
using a part of your brain that you've never really used before. And look,
Yeah.
there's Spanish speaking people all around.
Oh, yeah.
And it's sort of like I'm starting to clue into their conversation. Oh, that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Now, I started to learn Hebrew as well, which I'm very fascinated with. But the problem was that I don't have Hebrew uses a whole different alphabet.
Mm.
And so when it's asking you to spell something, you have to spell it phonetically.
Phonetically.
Right. And I was real bad at that.
Mm.
So I just stopped the Hebrew part and
Ah.
just stuck with the Spanish part.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm telling you, Barry, this is almost miraculous. I took Spanish in high school,
Same.
and this is so much easier, so much more fun, and it seems to get into a part of your brain that causes you to really remember this stuff. Unlike,
Oh, I
what we
could
were
talk to
learning in
that a little
class.
a
Go
little bit
ahead. Yeah,
because
I would
it's
imagine
called
you could.
gamifying learning. And I thought this would have come much more along by now than it has, but I think that we've had so many problems in our educational system, which we'll probably end up touching upon some of that
Oh yeah.
here in a bit. But it's using, and you already alluded to it, that you're getting nudged at the right times. Even Hallie nudging you as well. You're getting these little dopamine hits, so you're
That's
getting
what it
these
is.
rewards.
That is what it is.
And
I am
so,
definitely getting rewarded that way.
yeah, so yeah, this gamifying should be used much more. Hey, what is the name of that called again?
Duolingo,
In my
Doulingo. And you can pull this down from the App Store. It's like I said, it's free, and you're in immediately. And
I'm
I,
going to
I,
do that.
I started, and I haven't taken any Spanish classes for a long time, so I just started at
Same.
the very beginning. You could kind of choose your level. I just, beginner,
Yeah,
and
I took like
very gratifying.
Yeah, I took like 3 years of it.
Same.
And as soon as you get away from it, you totally lose it.
Gone.
But I've been to Mexico a few times, been to Spain. And when you get in the culture, it kind of comes back pretty good.
Right.
But at this point, it's been so long, it feels so lost and foreign to me. I go to this Mexican restaurant down the street like once a week. It's run by total Mexicans. And I want to be able to just order everything in Mexican.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be cool?
Spanish. Yeah. They're the nicest people too. I mean, I love these people. The food is amazing.
And I love the language too. I think the language
too.
Sounds really cool. And and I just think, again, for over 50 starting over, it's never too late.
No, it's fun.
If you haven't learned a language, the technology today allows you to be able to learn these things at an accelerated rate, and it's fun.
Right.
And so I think that we should always be in learn mode.
Yes.
And I think, back to some things that make us healthy, you were talking about this whole loneliness thing and how that can kill you. But I also think if we're not continually pressing forward with either our exercise, with our diet, or with our learning, we're going to regress. There's no middle ground. We got to keep on pushing forward with these things.
Yeah, because some of these things physically and mentally get a little bit harder as we go. So it's kind of a personal responsibility to do so. Hey, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Dr. Phil.
Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil's been on a roll lately.
Yeah, he has.
He's been saying some pretty powerful stuff.
Did you listen to that episode? Did I send you the episode on Rogan? I think I sent it to Lisa. I thought I sent it to you, and I said, just start at the 1 hour mark. And because I was listening to it, with Rogan, most of his podcasts, I'm like, I don't care about that person. That I don't listen to most of them. Right. But then when I see a name, I'm like, like Dr. Phil, that'll be a good one. And that happened about a week or two ago. And I'm listening to this podcast. And I'm like, this podcast sucks, man. It's boring. I mean, Phil has nothing to say. And I got to tell you, I have a strange relationship in my head with Dr. Phil because I watched him for many years on that show.
Yeah, the Dr. Phil show.
Yeah, he would what would be the word? Exploit a guest. So he's got somebody coming on there with a mental problem of some sort or another. And in front of an audience, he would pick that prime time to towards the end when he's got 30 seconds in between commercials, which was very, very irritating. But he would chastise them in some way and the audience would explode and erupt. And it's like, man, I was like, you're a total sellout, like to the psychological
That's
industry.
how I felt too. I felt the exact same
for years.
A lot of people really liked that show, but I would get mad watching that show because of the same reason you said. Exploit. That's what I felt like was happening too. I'm like, this is like I used to love watching Frasier. It's like, this is taking Frasier to a basement level where you're really using these people and causing them distress actually. And so I just never, but now when I heard him recently, I'm like, gosh, Dr. Phil, that was pretty powerful.
Well, Lisa would always tape his shows and watch them at her convenience. And I'd walk by and be like, oh God. And she's like, he's been really touching on some deep controversial subjects lately. Yes. She's been saying that for the last couple years or so. So I think, he did what he did to rise to fame and notoriety in the daytime genre scene. But at some point, he didn't need any more fame or money or anything. And not to mention, he saw society slipping down the toilet.
Crumbling, right.
Yeah. And so he decided to start talking about it. And I'll bet you, that was on CBS. I'll bet you that he got a lot of pullback from that.
Oh, absolutely. He did.
Yeah, he did. So he's going out on he quit that. And I mean, I don't know if there's still residual stuff going on, but he's starting his own network. Yeah, man. So anyways, I pulled up the Dallas Morning News because I couldn't remember the name of it and stuff. So he was talking about that on Rogan. I'm going to say too, with that podcast, if you go dead to the 1 hour mark, he starts talking like it gets really interesting, that podcast. Now, even more so, Merle, this morning, he's on Jordan Peterson's latest podcast, and that's 10 times better than the Rogan podcast because you got two very accomplished psychologists talking on the same level about the same concerns. It's riveting. I'm not done with it yet. I'm probably more than halfway done. But I think it's important to get this word out. So I think it's starting in April. I'll just say, talk a little bit about this article here, the Dallas Morning News. This article is from back in January, but it says Daytime's TV most popular psychologist Phil McGraw, better known as Dr. Phil, is teaming up with Fort Worth-based Trinity Broadcasting Network to launch his television network, Merritt Street Media. Merritt Street. I love that because it's interesting. Right there, he's throwing shade in the face of equity.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. I see that.
Yeah. And so he's ending his 21-year relationship with CBS Media Ventures. And in May 2023, this is pushed back to April now. He says it's launching in April. He's back with a new television that was starting late April, anchored by his own show, Dr. Phil Primetime. Now, see, this guy should be thinking about retirement at this point. But I'm telling you, from listening to him talk on these podcasts, this is his real passion project. And you know what? I'm sorry, I'm going off script and talking on my own here, but we need these people. Look, it's like Elon Musk buying Twitter. He bought us a little more time to save ourselves by rescuing free speech and social media right there. Boy, now, I don't want to see us turn into a total oligarchy, but right now, some of us with the means, and all of us need to stand up and start speaking out like you did during COVID, Merle.
Right on, Barry.
they talk about, you should listen to the Jordan Peterson podcast with Dr. Phil. They talk about in cite studies about how we are pressured into silence, and it's 75% worse than it was in the 50s, if you remember the censorship period back then in society. It's 75% worse now that we will not speak out about all of the things that are going on because we're so afraid of being called an ism or a phobic or whatever, all their little tricks. And it's more important now than ever that we start standing up to this stuff. So he says, here's a quote from him. He says, I'm making a shift because I want to do something different. I'm really proud of what we did for 21 seasons at CBS, but I want to do something with a broader platform and wider guardrails. That speaks to them trying to rein him in for sure. Okay, he says, to do that, I needed more than 1 hour a day. And here's another, I'm talking myself again now. Here's another thing. Watching Dr. Phil bothered me. He would make, they would lay the premise in the first 15 minutes. In the second 15 minutes, when he's trying to give some advice, it was commercial every 1 minute. And it was really,
I didn't watch it enough. That does sound annoying.
It was very, very annoying. So hopefully he's, that's the thing that bothers me with broadcast TV anyway, is that in any regard, trying to get your news.
Yeah, exactly.
And you get a 7-minute soundbite. Come on, you're not getting any news out of that.
No.
So that's what he says he's doing. He's got quite a panel too of TV shows. I know one person stuck out to me during the conversation, Mike Rowe. You remember him?
I like Mike Rowe a lot.
He's got his own show on there.
That's great. And so this is coming out next month. This is going to be here any second.
Right, for sure. And so this article says he spared no expense with this.
Wait. The Kareem Abdul-Jabbar from his old set. That's funny.
Oh, they had celebrity cutouts. He just decked things out. But one thing that I remember he said on Rogan, I found very moving. He said that he was telling the story how he was sitting at the breakfast bar in his house with his wife is eating some cereal or something. She just got her head down eating. And Phil went through the 3 major news stations and went through all 3 of these stations and absolutely nothing of importance is on there, of things that really matter. What happened to our media these days? He said, this is speaking to our relationships with our wives, Merle. He said, she never even looked up. She just said, well, you are the media. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah. She put that back in his court.
The birth of this network.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah.
Now, isn't that interesting that she says one sentence and he creates an entire television network?
Right.
The power that women have over men is amazing.
Very true and super, super important.
It is super important.
This, I just saw this. I did not read this whole article because I was in such a hurry to get to the show here. And, but I pulled it up right before because I wanted to remember the name of the network. But it says owning the debate lane. I can't tell you what I remember from the podcast that he talked about. This is so important, Merle. He says that, one of the many things, and this, that has been shut down in recent years is the debates. Any debates. Bring a conservative onto a college campus, and what do? Bullhorns and everything else they can to not let this person speak. But also just debates on a stage or on the media. It's a lost art because the people that are saying the most destructive things in this country cannot really back up what they're saying with facts.
Of course they can't. Of course they can't. Debate is a feature of a free society.
There you go.
And when debate gets shut down, get a clue. You're veering into tyranny. That's exactly where we are. Our governor, Katie Hobbs here in Arizona, refused to debate Carrie Lake. Refused it.
And she couldn't stand up to that.
And when you listen to Katie Hobbs talk, she sounds like a high school California girl.
Oh
And
God.
she just sounds like, a Valley girl. And it's like I could, if she were to have debated Carrie Lake would have devoured
Oh yeah.
Katie Hobbs
Oh
like a
yeah.
lioness would in the Serengeti. And so that of course Katie Hobbs knew that was gonna. How do they get away with
How did
not
it get away
debating?
with it?
We're coming up to the presidential election, and I'm absolutely positive that Joe Biden's going to find a way not to debate Donald Trump.
His handlers will find a way for him not to debate Donald Trump because
I mean,
I saw a headline. You should be able to talk to this, Merle, because I didn't read the story, but I saw a headline somewhere. Tucker Carlson said America's been without a president for 3.5 years.
mm, mm.
And I should have read it, but I was doing whatever I was doing. But I knew what the content was because I know that we've been without a president for 3.5 years, and it's the deep state running this country into the ground at will with their own agenda in
No, it's
place.
absolutely right. And when you take a look at all of the facts around this, it's astounding. So, one of the things I did last week is I got the privilege of being able to attend a, a red carpet event on a film premiere called Hollywood Takeover.
Oh, yes.
And this happened last week. Anne Marie and I got to go. We had VIP passes. It was on Sunset Strip. And Hollywood Takeover is put on by Epic Times. The reason I was able to get the VIP passes is because Casey Fleming, the CEO of Black Ops Partners, is in the document. It's a documentary. He's in the documentary, and he got us the passes. He was actually there, and there was a showing of the documentary, and then there was this panel discussion that Casey was involved in, along with several celebrities and the film producer that the that the movie. He's actually an executive. I don't think he's a producer. He's a film executive that the documentary was revolving around, and the documentary is fantastic. It's the thing I like about it is it's not too long. It's about a little over an hour.
Mm.
It's very fascinating. It's going to make you angry. The conversation afterwards in the discussion was at least as interesting as the documentary, probably more so. The whole basic premise was around this film executive. His name is Chris Fenton. Chris Fenton is the guy that is behind the movie Iron Man, the Iron Man series, a lot of these other superhero comic book heroes that we see in the movies now. He is behind that. He's the executive. And Tiffany Meyer of NTD News, which is an offshoot of Epic Times, follows him and interviews him in his house in Malibu overlooking the ocean. He's got this fantastic house. And he talks about how he was in the business and they started to realize that they could open up their business into China and make a whole lot of money. So if you take an example, that first Iron Man movie that came out made $20 million. It was distributed here in the United States. It was a very, very good movie. And Robert Downey Jr. really made a place for himself. I mean, this was a giant, he's a great actor. He's had his troubles in the past, but this was a movie that he really made his mark in.
Yep.
And so now in the meantime, while after this movie came out, they came out with Iron Man 2. But Iron Man 3 was one that Chris Fenton had made arrangements with the government of China to distribute this movie in China. So while he made $20 million on that first movie, on that third movie in China, he made $700 million from China. 700 compared to 20.
Right.
It speaks volumes, Barry, because what ended up happening, as Chris points out, is that everybody started doing this. And as a result, the Chinese government, also known as the Chinese Communist
Party, CCP.
Party, they are the ones that would start to dictate what was in the movie and how the movie was going to act and how the movie was going to end. And what basically they've shown in this documentary is how the CCP realized that Hollywood could be is a propaganda arm, and if they buy it, they could use it to destroy the soul of America. And that is what they've done. They pointed out throughout the documentary that Hollywood now is pretty much 100% owned by China, as well as all of the theaters. So you had some pretty prominent people in the film besides Casey Fleming. You had Kevin Sorbo and his wife were in it as well. If you remember, Kevin Sorbo was the one that played Hercules, but he's been blackballed from Hollywood. He makes independent films now, and it's because, as he and his wife pointed out in the panel discussion, Hollywood has sold out its morals for the almighty dollar. And they sold out to the CCP. And they gave away their morals. Chris Fenton was up there talking about how he did this and came to the realization that he did this and started to. Now what he does is he talks to all of these different executives in Hollywood about why.
Now that he's got his $1 billion.
And he's written a book as well called Feeding the Dragon. So it's an expose of exactly how this actually worked. So I got to say, Barry, as I sat in the audience and watched this film, I've started to get more and more angry, especially at guys like Chris Fenton, who basically seems to be the hero of the film, but he's not really a hero.
After
he actually
sold
out the country. And this is almost like blood money right here, Benedict Arnold kind of money right here. And he's living in this mansion in Malibu, which is ginormous. Okay, you go by these places. You and I rode our bicycles by some of these places on the beach, and they're magnificent. And who wouldn't want to live there? I mean, my wife would love to live in a house like that, but guess what? Her husband isn't going to sell out America in order to live there. But when you start to realize that all of these houses, because that whole city is run by Hollywood, if very few people that are working there don't have something to do with the business. And so the whole town stinks of it. And when I realized the timing of the China takeover here, I realized that I moved to California before all of that happened. And then in the 2000 teens, it went into high super gear. Well, also in the 2000 teens, I started to notice the degradation of my neighborhood. 2009, when all the homeless people started to come in. 2014, when it was like an avalanche of homeless people. Go a little bit further, and now you've got all of the illegal aliens that are mixed in with all of the homeless people, and also the heroin use went out of control, so that you had literal zombies walking around in my formerly nice neighborhood. And then to the point where we had to flee. We had to get out of there before something awful were to happen, because awful things were happening all around.
Now, Merle,
I realized that it was guys like Chris Fenton that were responsible for making that happen, and they're laughing all the way to the bank, Barry.
It's exactly right. Now let's just take that and extend it even further. It should be obvious to everyone, when you got a president that has kept the border open throughout this administration, paying people to come in here. And so we've had an unprecedented storming through the border, literally handing them visa cards and making their voyage that much more attainable. When the governor, what's his name, of Texas, what's his name? Abbott is putting up razor wire and stuff like that to block up holes and stuff like that, while federal government agents are then commanded to take that away and open up the border again, so that this influx of young Chinese men can come in here in a very orchestrated manner. So let's, put this all together now. Now we already know that the Chinese have garnered influence over our school system, over our educational system, and have eliminated critical thinking, replaced it with critical race theory, and have created the division in the United States. So we definitely are seeing an attempt at a takeover from within.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Abraham Lincoln said it well that, and I'm paraphrasing, that there's no way anybody can beat this country. The only way that it could be defeated is from within. Many of our most famous founders and throughout history, this is a known fact, and we're seeing it happen right now. And it's interesting that you said what you just said, Barry, because, you know, it was an interesting panel discussion that happened afterwards, and you're actually playing right into something that Casey Fleming brought up, which really to me put a bow on this whole thing, because the panel discussion was mostly between the Sorbos, Kevin and his wife. I'm trying to remember her name. It will come out in a second. And then there was Chris Fenton, and then Tiffany Meyer was hosting the whole thing. And then you had Casey Fleming there. You had Steve Yates. He was a national security advisor. And then you had a human rights attorney and a film critic up there, and they're all talking, and they're mostly talking about Hollywood and how this is affecting Hollywood, and that the Chinese, they own all the theaters too. This came out. The Sorbos were talking about how they had been excommunicated from Hollywood because they stood for their morals.
He's vocal.
He actually, I really loved what the Sorbos were saying, especially his wife she was on fire. She knows history. They know history. But really talking about selling out this country for the almighty dollar, and how we've made these decisions just based on money, and how this country has changed, and how we used to value God. Now we value money, and we don't care about any of this. Chris Fenton then started talking about how, well, we don't want to, start a war with China. And this is kind of how the whole panel discussion ended, because Casey Fleming took over from there to correct that whole thing. I don't think he had a liking for Chris Fenton at all, but he actually level setted this whole thing and let everybody know, no, you're in a war right now. It's called the gray zone. And inside the gray zone, this is everything short of conventional war. Yes. The goal is to win the war without ever firing a bullet. Yep. And this is coming at us. Hollywood is just one small way that they're coming at us. Their goal is death by 1,000 pinpricks. Yep. And you brought up the border right away. That's the natural first place to look to see this incredible avalanche of attack that's happening at it. You explained it perfectly. We've got lawfare coming at us. We've got cyber war coming at us. Yeah. We've got this incredible spending that's happening, which is causing massive inflation, so people can't buy anything. I mean, really, when you take a look at all of these ways, it's a massive attack that's happening, and people need to understand that they're in this war right now, because it's like, I compare it to like World War I, where you got trench warfare. You've got one country on one side, another country on the other, and they're firing missiles and bombs and bullets in between. And here we are walking in that middle area called no man's land, and we're just not knowing that we're in a war. Well, you're going to be a casualty like that. So the first thing to do is, you got to know that you're in this war, and what the stakes are, and what the tactics are that are coming at you, and how to avoid this. When you take a look at these movies that are coming out of Hollywood today, they're soul crushing our country, to the point where we now have this attitude towards America that we don't see anything good in America. In fact, many of us hate America now. And if there were ever a war, we wouldn't have it inside of our heart to fight for anything, because we don't even know what we stand for. And what we've been told that we stand for is slavery and death. And
yet we abolish.
Not what this country is about.
Right. Yeah, we're the same ones that abolished the slavery and corrected the wrongs of a very uncivilized past. That's humans were not very civilized just over 100 years ago. It's a very young civilization. Now, what I do want to say is, just to clarify this, I think it's simple to understand. Remember 9/11. We had our freedoms turned against us right there. And they were very, very proud of that fact, that we could go through an airport and we were free people and all that. And that is how that they were able to hijack these airplanes and turn them into weapons against us. And what China has been doing very, very consciously and very smartly is turning capitalism against us. There's inherent greed. We're rewarded. It's a brilliant system, really. We've become the most innovative country in the world by far ever, because of capitalism, incentivizing people to use their intelligence and wherewithal to innovate and to excel. And it's a wonderful system in that regard. But they also used it against us. Look no further than all of your explanation about what happened in Hollywood. Look no further than what's going on with whatever's going on behind the scenes of Biden's regime, because he's a Manchurian candidate, doesn't really know where he's at anyway. And I'm going to tell you straight up, these people in Washington that we elect, most of them are not very smart. They're not smarter than you and I, that's for sure. No. And so they can easily tell themselves that if they get a bunch of kickbacks for passing this, which leads to that, which leads to this, it's not their fault. It's all okay. And what's going on with the deep state and supporting all these wars, passing all of these bills so we give trillions upon trillions of dollars to people overseas, which is really just lining the pockets of a whole lot of people in the military industrial complex and bouncing back into our politicians. This is how China is using capitalism to take over our country.
That's exactly right. Well said, Barry. That was very well said. And by the way, Biden is in this movie, Hollywood Takeover. Wow. You see him in there making a deal with Xi Jinping regarding Hollywood. And so you're right. He is the Manchurian candidate. He's bought and paid for. Yeah. You can see the policies that he is espousing, namely,
it's amazing.
It really is. When you look at the State of the Union address that we just saw, just shifting gears here, boy, Barry, talk about espousing ideals that will literally destroy this country, and being angry about it, while saying that the State of the Union is very good. First off, if the State of the Union is so good, why were you so angry for the entire time? Yeah. I mean, people, when things are going good, people aren't normally angry. I know why he was angry the entire time. It's because they had him all jacked up on some kind of drug and
cocktail,
and then they told them, because the only time that he sounds semi-coherent is when he's angry. And it's interesting for people. I'm sorry, the man's got dementia. And it seems to me that people that are dealing with dementia seem to be more on their game when they're saying, "Get off my grass." And that's what seemed to be the whole thing. This was not a State of the Union. We didn't hear about the State of the Union. We heard about his campaign. This was now, constitutionally, the president owes us a State of the Union. That's his constitutional duty that he took an oath to do. He did not do that. He attacked half of the country the entire time. He attacked the Supreme Court and went after them for the whole Roe v. Wade thing. And when you think about it, he misinformed us about what actually happened in that court case, which was it gave the responsibility to decide on abortion to the people in every state. That's what that happened. They didn't outlaw abortion. That's not what happened, but that's exactly what Biden said from his bully pit. And then he chastised the Supreme Court for making that decision and then threatened them by telling them, "You'll soon find out the power of women voters." And I don't know if you saw that scene, Barry, but you should have seen them. I saw Sotomayor sitting there looking like she had had her heart just stomped on by the president. Wow. This is a a liberal justice, they all looked like they were crushed. And by the way, that's very unprecedented. I've only seen it one other time, and it was from Barack Obama. That doesn't happen in State of the Unions. But then really the part that really got me, Barry, was the part about Laken Riley and her
I
death.
saw that.
You know, first off, the whole thing seemed like a fiasco from up on stage. It was hard to understand many of the things he was saying because he was speaking so fast. Again, I think it had to do with whatever that cocktail was that they gave him, right? But
well, that they started 25 minutes late. I bet they had to just kind of tweak it out.
That's the thing too. I mean, talk about, you know, we're both in business, right? Imagine showing up for your most important sales presentation 25 minutes late.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to go?
Not well.
The State of the Union is a sales presentation.
Yeah, it is.
He has to sell the State of the Union to the people, to Congress, to America. And you show up 25 minutes late. Well, we found out there was a protest that was happening, a Hamas protest, actually. They're blaming and saying, well, that's why he was 25 minutes late. But come on, Barry. Can you imagine, again, showing up to your thing 25 minutes late and saying, oh, it's traffic.
Right.
That doesn't work. It doesn't work. Okay, so you disrespected us right to begin with. Then you came in to talk about the State of the Union. What do you talk about first? Ukraine, but not America, Ukraine, and talking about how they desperately need our money. This is a wealth redistribution thing happening right here. That's what this is. But they desperately need our money. Are you the president of America or of Ukraine? Because you're protecting their border like nobody's business. But our border, you make a joke out of. You tell Laken Riley's parents that your heart goes out to them because you've lost kids too. I'm sorry.
You know what? He does that. I'm sorry. He does that all the time. Every time and it's been noted throughout the years, is every time he's faced with somebody that lost somebody in the service or something, he starts talking about losing his own kid. It's like, could you imagine being that parent? Wouldn't you want to just strangle him? It's not about you, Joe. It's about me right now.
It seems sociopathic, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have any feeling for these people whatsoever. All you have is feeling for yourself. Yeah. And by the way, your kids weren't murdered. Yeah. Their kid was murdered by a man that was an illegal alien, that it was Joe Biden's responsibility. It was because of his decisions that he was even in the country to begin with. Right. It was because of his decisions that he got let go to be able to do this. And then there was an interview this weekend on MSNBC where he apologized. Because let me just back up. He was pressed in that State of the Union to say this young woman's name, and he called her Lincoln Riley.
Right.
So he doesn't get the name right. He invokes his children and tells the parents that his heart goes out to him when it was his responsibility for the young woman's death. Then he goes on MSNBC a few days later and apologizes. But he does not apologize for mispronouncing Laken's name. He apologizes for saying that for calling the murderer an illegal alien.
Yeah, right.
Makes a big deal out of that. Lots of other things that were in this State of the Union that were just absolutely crazy, Barry. Like, are you kidding me? You're trying to tell me that the economy is doing well right now? Like, who can believe that when they've been to the store and they see what's happening now?
Well, they're playing the Slider card again. If in 2022, we had 12% inflation. And then in 2023, we only had 3% inflation. They're trying to divide that and tell you that inflation's down over 50% or whatever. Truth of the matter is, no, you add the two together, which equals 15% inflation.
Yeah.
Go to the store.
I got something here. It says that it's up 17% since he took office, and then prices of the stuff of life have risen 30%.
That's
Staple
not
food,
sustainable.
fuel, appliances and care, shelter, mortgages. No kidding, Barry. Our dollar does not go as far as it used to go. It's tax season right now. I'm looking at our expenses from last year, and I did okay, but doing okay anymore, you're losing. It's a
Right.
losing battle right now. The expenses are out through the roof. Insurance has gone
Yeah.
through the roof, and this
Yeah.
guy's trying to tell you. I mean, the basic question is: are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?
Well,
And the answer is absolutely not. Are you kidding me?
you heard about the black vote has been shifting exponentially just based on that alone. I mean, I'm seeing these YouTube videos all the time now with black people going, "Look, I voted for Biden, but I had money when Trump was in office, and now I don't."
Right.
And so they're losing that vote too. But how couldn't they? I mean, the blatant just disregard for human life by this administration is unbelievable.
Well, it really is. It really is, and I mean, it's a sad thing to see that this is happening. But Barry, I saw the Hollywood Takeover thing on Wednesday, and then I saw the State of the Union on Thursday, and then I listened to the rest of the Joe Rogan Riley Gaines thing over the
That was
weekend.
really good.
And you know what? I noticed that there's a theme to all three of these things. I mean, there's a lot of the same thing that's happening. I went to the Hollywood Takeover thing, and I heard about how Kevin Sorbo had been blackballed, and that now he's making these movies on the side, independent filmmaking. One of his most famous ones is called God Is Not Dead. It was interesting on the panel discussion how he said that the budget for his movie was about the budget for Steve Fenton's Iron Man. He said that was their catering budget. So the catering budget paid for this movie, and God Is Not Dead. Now, I'd never seen that movie. I watched it over the weekend, and it was interesting. It's about a college student that's taking philosophy. He's a freshman, and the professor, who's played by Kevin Sorbo, tells the class that they have to, in philosophy, let's skip all the BS here. I want you, and he passes out a blank sheet of paper, and he commands them all to write God is dead on their paper, sign their name, and turn it back in. And because he doesn't want to have to talk about this silly God in the sky is not real. And the one guy protests and says he's not going to do it. And so the teacher goes after him and makes him do three speeches to convince the students if God is actually alive. But he punishes the entire class by making them go through what he said was a section that most people don't even pass the test on. So he said he would skip that if everybody signed the paper, and this one guy not signing it makes the whole class have to go through this, which is of course humiliating, and now the whole class hates him.
Sure.
And when come to find out in the end, when they do the credits, that the movie's based on a whole crap load of court cases, because this kind of thing is actually happening on campus. So when I saw Riley Gaines talking about the thing that they forced those girls on the Kentucky swim team, really all of the collegiate women's sports, and had Leah Thomas, a 6'4" man, in their locker rooms,
right,
dressing and competing against them. I saw the same tactics being used on her, where she talks about how first with the vaccination, she didn't want to take the vaccination because she'd already had COVID and thought that she already had natural immunity. And then they pressured her by telling her, but you're the captain of the team and you represent us and you don't represent yourself anymore. And they put all this kind of gaslighting kind of pressure on her to make her capitulate to the masses. And if she didn't, they would use her as an example to humiliate her. And these students are going through that kind of pressure on their core beliefs. Whether you're a Christian, whether you're an athlete, whether you're trying to get ahead by working hard, these things are eventually going to come back on you. And so when you see a Riley Gaines being persecuted this way, it's incumbent on all of us to support somebody like that, because we're all in the same boat. We all are trying to get ahead. I love what the Dr. Phil, the merit thing, because the merit system is what this country operates the best on.
It's capitalism.
That is what capitalism is. And this is being stolen from us left and right. The gaslighting is happening. The same thing was happening from that podium that Joe Biden was standing on when he was doing the State of the Union. I mean, they are trying to bully us into a corner so that we won't say anything. And back to that State of the Union, the Republicans. I'm most upset with the Republicans. The Republicans sat there and didn't do anything while this man was tearing apart our country. They're the worst. They're the ones that are all trying to get elected, we're going to stop all this corruption and everything. And then you get into office and you say nothing and you do nothing.
Right.
I'm so disappointed with all the talk, Barry. I'm tired of the talk. This is the thing. At the end of that movie, I know I'm jumping around, but at the end of that movie, Hollywood Takeover, I got interviewed by Epic Times. And I was telling them that, look, are we just going to sit here as our country burns down and just talk about it? Just talk while it's being destroyed. Why doesn't somebody get a hose and put the fire out? I mean, that's what I'm so upset about right now, is that it seems to me that we've got our border is a sieve right now, and they're just coming through. We're just going to let that happen and say, oh, this is terrible. I mean, why don't we do something about it?
Where have the impeachment hearings been?
Right? Where? I mean, how many months ago did they say we're going to do an impeachment investigation? Now what? There's nothing. Nobody does anything.
I literally think, now I know, of course, Biden is a figurehead. He's not truly responsible, but he's the one that's got to take the fall. His name's on it. I literally think he should be impeached and tried for treason for the border alone. His number one job is to keep the country safe and secure, protected.
That's exactly right. And after what we saw from Brett Weinstein and how we learned about the Darien Pass and how the United Nations is sponsoring all these people and paying for their trip so that they could go through this pass, and we're the number one financial sponsor of the United Nations, meaning that we're doing this knowingly and on purpose. We are our government is purposely destroying the country. And it's interesting, back to that Riley Gaines interview with Joe Rogan. If you guys haven't seen that yet, you got to see what she says. This 23-year-old woman, and she's I say amazing. Woman, not girl, she is so mature. She understands history. She's not afraid to speak truth to power, and she's spot on, man. She knows who she is about. That is true. That is true. And she's talking about on the show how they are systematically trying purposely to destroy the country. And why? Well, she couldn't answer that question.
For profit. They're just getting paid.
I think that back to Brett Weinstein again, something that he said on Joe Rogan a few weeks ago was that it's not just about money, but it is all about power. Yeah. Absolutely. And while some of these companies have been destroyed, like we saw Budweiser being destroyed last year,
destroying
some of this is
itself.
actually being done on purpose so that they can solidify their power in concentrated areas. And it's very easy to manage if it's concentrated. So when you see these kinds of things like CNN and their viewership going down the tubes,
right,
they're still very effective in what they're doing and what they're getting out there, and you can see it every day because they're keeping they're keeping a large amount of our population in the dark and in complete ignorance. My mother was talking to somebody recently and saying, "Gosh, can you believe what's going on down at the border?" And the woman says, "What's going on down at the border? How do you not know?
Wow.
How can you not see? I mean, it's infecting all of our cities now. It's everywhere now.
Right.
It's not just at the border. How do you not know? Well, it's because these organizations are doing a number on people like this and keeping them misinformed. And it's sick. I'm tired of it, Barry.
I hear you. I am too. I have a little bit of good news.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, in these regards. Have you heard any of the news about is this the beginning of the end of America's woke madness? Democrat cities rolling back on progressive policies. I mean, how could they? How could you keep voting to kill yourselves? I mean, at some point, some things have to change. In cities like including San Francisco and New York, voters and leaders are rethinking the liberal policies as they face issues, including rising crime and drug use. And, when you do the defund the police stuff, how silly do things have to get before you just start realizing I don't feel safe going to the store anymore?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So have you heard about this kind of stuff at all?
I have. I've been seeing where, like San Francisco, they made some kind of new law about the car robbery, and then the car theft started to go down. I mean,
wow, how about that?
Yeah, you mean if we enforce the laws that are on the books, that crime will go down? I didn't realize that.
Maybe repeal laws like anything under $900 isn't prosecutable. Just a thought.
What's funny about that to me is because that's actually gonna be on the November ballot in California, which is a good thing. But it is interesting to me how the law itself is that it doesn't say that you can't be prosecuted for stealing something under $1,000. It's that it's the level of when it's a felony, and it's at about $1,000.
Okay.
And so what they're doing is they're just not prosecuting misdemeanors that are theft.
Right.
Why not? I mean, you that's what really needs to change, because if we lower that amount, then what we're doing is we're saying let's put it down to $100. Okay, so some kid goes in and he steals something, it's a felony, your life is ruined.
And on the other hand, if it is a misdemeanor and you prosecute it, and 3 misdemeanors in a row equals a felony, okay, you're making progress.
The thing is, there's a great philosophy. We've seen how it works. We saw it in New York City, how it worked under one of the mayors, Judy Rudiani. He changed New York as far as crime goes, and the way they did it was by enforcing and prosecuting misdemeanors. Because if you prosecute the small stuff, people won't move on to the large stuff.
Right.
That's how it works. It's always worked that way. It's actually a science now. But now we've denied the science and then accused the people that are all about the science of being science deniers.
I know that's always the case. I think that's really all I had at the top of my head. And what about you? Where are you at?
No, actually, that's about it for me as well. I just, for me, just looking at the state of our union, which by Joe Biden, it's doing great. It's not doing great. We're in trouble. We're in big trouble. And if something doesn't happen soon, I don't know what's going to happen. We're heading into an election season. I am so glad that the Supreme Court recently decided in a unanimous decision, which is highly unusual, especially in this politically charged climate, that the ballot issue in Colorado, where they were going to take President Trump off of the ballot, was unconstitutional. And so really, that's the end of that. They can't just take the president off of the ballot. Now, the reason they said that is because states don't have the right to do that because it's a federal election. They could do that to a state elected person, but not a federally elected person.
Okay, back to an important point, though. That is clearly another attempt at election interference, one of many that's repeated. Why are the Republicans not going after that like a shark after bait?
I mean, seriously, Barry, this is the thing that's like, are you kidding me? This is
egregious
tyranny. I mean, just outright tyranny. This is worse than what King George was doing during the Revolutionary War. I mean, taxation without representation is nothing compared to this. And Joe Biden brags about it still. We're not going to let him win. Well, what does that mean? You're right. It means this. You're going to use other methods. You're not even going to let them run. That means it's not government by the people, for the people, and of the people, or by the consent of the governed anymore. And that is unconstitutional. It's against everything our country stands for. And that means they're going to try something else. It's like the student loan thing. Oh, well, Supreme Court said you can't do that. Well, we'll find another way to give people your hard-earned tax dollars
to buy votes.
And besides, besides all that, if they have the money to do that, that means they've been collecting way, way too much money from us.
That's a really good point.
And when we really look at it, that is theft. You're taking money that you don't actually require because you can. We should be auditing the IRS, not the other way around.
No, that's absolutely right. Now, this is like this gigantic boulder that they keep pushing just a little bit further and a little bit further. And the Republicans, I guess I'll call them that, independents, everybody else just says, nope, you can't push that anymore, but it already moved an inch. And then they try another thing, they push it again and they say, nope, can't move, but it moved another inch. Right. And they just keep doing it. And so this government is unrecognizable compared to what it was 10 years ago at this point.
I agree. And it's getting worse. And I mean, what they just came out with a $7.3 trillion budget, the Biden administration, with all kinds of crazy spending. The corporate tax rate goes up, but it doesn't actually cover the spending. At the end of this budget, we are $1.8 trillion short of the taxes, meaning we add another nearly $2 trillion to the deficit. To the debt, which is at about 35 trillion right now. So Biden talked about a corporate tax plan where we would increase corporate tax to 25%. And then he talked about the 500 billion that he would get from that. And imagine what we could do with 500 billion. I think it's really interesting that he talks about, imagine what we could do with 500 billion, because, well, imagine if we had that Ukraine money back. Imagine what we could do with that for America.
Right.
But it turns out, Barry, that the 500 billion that he was imagining is actually the bill that's due because of the interest on the 35 trillion that we're already in debt. So what could you do with 500 billion? Nothing.
Pay interest.
Pay the interest on the rising debt that you've created. And here's another fat thing that happened, which is you're talking about these billionaires paying their fair share. And at the same time, your son is cheating, clearly has cheated on taxes. And so have you, because you've taken loans from the money that
so
your
much
son
worse
has embezzled from China and Ukraine through really blood money. Same kind of money that we were talking about with Hollywood Takeover that Chris Fenton got that's living in that mansion.
Yeah.
That's the same kind of money, except for I believe they paid taxes on that money. But it's still the same kind of blood money that allows Joe Biden to live in 3 mansions on the ocean, allows Hunter Biden to get paid $1 million a year from Burisma, allows Hunter Biden to get millions and millions of dollars from CEFC, an energy company run by the Chinese Communist Party, and not paid taxes on it. None of them paid taxes on it, but yet you're standing there as the president of the United States in the State of the Union and chastising everybody and all of these rich people for not paying their taxes when you're the king of not paying taxes.
Sure.
That kind of character makes me sick.
Yeah.
And, I don't have strong enough words to say about how I'm feeling about what this government has done. And I say government, it's not just Joe Biden. I'm blaming the Republicans more than anybody else.
Yeah, that's a smokescreen. They're just part of the smokescreen.
Absolutely, they are. They are. But the way they sat there and didn't do anything in the face of all of this craziness, I mean, I hate it, Barry.
I do too. I do too. I am going to have to get going real soon, but just wanted to see if perhaps you caught a good show or movie or anything like that lately.
Well, the movie that I mentioned earlier, God Is Not Dead, is a great movie. I highly recommend that movie. Even if you're not a Christian, I think that it's important to see this kind of movie because of what's happening on college campuses today. And like I pointed out earlier, that there was something very similar between this young Christian that was trying to just defend his faith and say that I can't write down that God is dead when I'm a Christian, or I can't sit here and say that everything's cool as Riley Gaines when Leah Thomas, a 6'4" man, is competing against me, and she had to step out and say something.
That's so ridiculous. Everybody knows that's ridiculous.
What I loved about what she said was that she realized that the swimmers had to do something about it. They couldn't rely on somebody else to bail them out. She had to do that. And I think that's really what I'm talking about right now, is that it's time for us to do something about it and stop waiting for somebody else to do something about it. Riley Gaines did that. And now she's out there, and what courage she has. But we need everyone en masse to lock arms with somebody like that and go out there and stand up for what's right.
And look at Kevin Sorbo. He put his whole career on the line.
He did. And now it's like they make when I watch that movie, God Is Not Dead, I liked Iron Man, by the way, but I got a lot more out of the message that Kevin Sorbo put out there. It's way more meaningful what he put in there. As much as I liked Iron Man, it's not going to benefit my life going forward, but this one would. And so you think about the amount of money that it took to make either one of those movies, and the one that was exponentially less money is far more impactful. And I think that I would love to see Hollywood get back to that place where they tell good stories of hope for this country, because I think there's a lot of hope. I haven't actually talked about it during this show at all, but I think that that's a story that still needs to be told. And that I do believe that if we can get people to get their head out of the sand, that we've got an opportunity. But that's a big order right now, because there's a lot of pressure to keep those heads down in the sand.
There really is, and it's tough. I know mainstream media has, as we're talking about, largely been going down the tubes, deservedly so, but there's still enough people that think they're getting their news from there that it's still a battle to be waged, because we have a generation or two that went from poorly educated to mal-educated.
Huh.
And
indeed,
that's a lot to turn around. That's a turning around the Titanic before it hits the iceberg right there.
Yeah, you got that right.
Yeah.
Well, so no bow that we can put on it that makes what we talked about look good. I can't think of anything.
Well, there's still, to be seen what happens with the upcoming election. I'm still putting my money on somehow or another they're going to get old Gavin Newsom in there instead of Biden. I feel like the powers that be are still, because I see that they put things out in the newspaper all the time to test the waters and see what they can get away with, like the latest variant on a disease or something like that. I feel like they're doing the same with Biden, wondering if, you think that maybe there's some chance. And so they jack him up for the State of the Union. And he just went on some softball late night thing just a week or two ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
Same kind of thing. They're making an attempt to just see. Let's see if the needle moves at all. But I think at the end of the day, they'll use the 25th Amendment or some kind of a means. I still don't even know what they got in mind. They might just off the guy.
I tend to believe that this State of the Union was not a State of the Union for the people, but more to prove to the Democrat Party that Joe Biden can still do what he does. I think that because it clearly wasn't a State of the Union. It clearly wasn't to unite the people. It seemed to be that they put all their eggs into let's show how Joe Biden can still fight against Donald Trump. I think that's what they were trying to prove, so that he could stay in and not get hit by the 25th Amendment. Yeah. I think that's what that was all about last week.
I think it was the attempt, but they'll see that it's not going to work. Did you see Joe Scarborough in some recent rant? He's always yelling at the camera while Mika always looks like she's smelling a fart. But Scarborough went on this huge rant about how great Biden is. It's like, dude, you sold your soul.
And so many people are doing that.
He used to be cool, though, before Trump derangement system stole his brain.
I mean, he was a conservative, supposedly, and now look at him.
But he was a moderate conservative, common sense conservative. He was like almost a Trey Gowdy type kind of a guy.
Yeah.
And he lost his mind.
He really did lose his mind. I mean, he has lost his mind, and so many people have. And I mean, I heard after the State of the Union how strong Biden was, and how he preached a sermon that day, and just he knocked it out of the park. And I'm like, what did you see that I did not?
They just want to see that so bad, you know.
They really do. Well, I mean, there is something psychologically when your guy gets up there and just yells at the other people that somehow they might feel like they're appeased by that, you know.
And it happens both ways, though. You had me watch that rebuttal, and you said by the it started off rough and all of that, but by the end you had tears in your eyes. I thought it was a shit show
everybody did.
When you want to see what you want to see. I thought that was like 12 minutes of the rights version of Greta Thunberg, where somebody was over-rehearsed with this drama in front of their family. Oh, come on, bring it a little harder. Oh, that's so good. It was so bad. It was cringy.
You know what? I have thought a lot about that, because I saw immediately how everybody felt the same way about that, except for me. And I had to think, well, why did I feel that way?
What's her name, by the way?
Katie Britt.
Okay, so if you guys want to look it up and see for yourselves, Katie Britt's rebuttal to the State of the Union address. It's on YouTube.
So as I thought back, why did I feel so strongly about that? And I think it had to do with the fact that I watched it right after I watched Joe Biden. And it couldn't have been worse. The State of the Union for me, that I kind of feel like almost anybody that made half a sense would have been like, oh my God, this person is the second coming. And maybe that's what happened to me. I got to listen to that again, because not one of my friends agreed with me on this.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I kind of felt silly that I said that. But now looking back, I can see that, wow, why didn't they have somebody like Vivek do it? Or why don't they ever do that? Why are the Republican rebuttals always so weak? Actually, every rebuttal is very
Vivek would have been perfect. Such a good point. But I'll say this to that. I thought it was pretty well written.
I think it was the writing that I was trying to listen through.
But that still was so scripted. And it's like, so it wasn't spontaneous to what was actually just transpired.
And all of them are scripted. I mean, I've never seen one where somebody could come in and just, like a Vivek, could come in and just be himself and not be, it would be extemporaneous speaking instead of what we saw. And I think that is what we needed to see right there.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing is, I had a really hard time finding the rebuttal on my Fire TV.
Wow.
And it's like, why is this so hard to find? I found it also interesting that I couldn't watch the Oscars. I had to.
Why would you want to watch that?
I didn't want to watch it, but Anne Marie was like, "Is it on?" And I'm like, "Well, you can't even watch it." There's all these different shows, like even the Super Bowl. Like I had to like buy something in order to watch the Super Bowl.
So
it's like,
if you wanted to watch the Oscars, you're saying what
I
got in the way?
Want to watch it. I couldn't find it on any of the stations.
Really? Yeah. I mean, I would never even look for it. You couldn't pay me to watch that. But I'm pretty surprised by that. I understand that their ratings just continue to plummet each year, worse and worse.
After going to Hollywood Takeover, and listen, Epic Times put that movie that attacked Hollywood right in the center of Hollywood, only days before the Oscars. That takes cojones right there, man.
Yeah.
And so now that I saw that, I want to see the China influence in the Oscars. Those are the people. And so, I was a little bit, I wouldn't have watched the whole thing because I would have gotten sick. But I was curious, what are these guys doing? Who are these people? Like, for instance, in that movie, Hollywood Takeover, I always liked Robert Downey Jr. until I saw Hollywood Takeover. It's like, what? I never saw those films. I don't know if you've seen it yet. But his whole thing about China is pretty crazy. And it's like, come on, really? And then and it made me very angry.
But he's a well-known closeted conservative.
Oh, well, that's not what he said in China. Watch the movie. And then you'll see, because then at the end in the panel discussion, Chris Fenton said, you can't blame Robert Downey Jr. for what he did in China because we told him to do that. And it was just like, the whole thing is cringy. You know what I mean? It's just like, all of you people, I want to clunk all your heads together.
Maybe with that, we should get going.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, it's fun.
Going off the rail here.
All right. Well, lots of fun as always, Merle. Again, hope to see you soon. I know it's coming out at a strange time.
To find us.
Yeah. All right. Love you guys.
No, how do you find Over 50 Starting Over?
Yeah. Please go to over50startingover.com. Sign up to our email list. You'll get all this to your email box as it happens. Go to YouTube, Over 50 Starting Over. Subscribe. Please share. I think most importantly, go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe there, and leave us a 5-star review so we can reach more people.
Right on.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right, man. Great
See you.